Good morning. So the last time I spoke to EO here in Seattle, instead of having 17 minutes, I had 17 hours. So apparently some compression needs to happen. At any rate, you guys are the survivors. You guys are the people who are making businesses grow, and when businesses grow, what do they create that the economy needs? Jobs, of course. What I want to talk about, what percentage of businesses don't make it to this room? What are the percentage of businesses that go away? Roughly 80%. Roughly 80%. And when I was trained as a banker, that was a daunting figure. Why? I went through bank training at Seattle First National Bank here in Seattle, which was at the time, First was a very interesting bank. It was the 13th largest bank at a time when we had 13,500 banks. Now that's a shitload of banks, okay? And if you go to the rest of the world, when you don't see the rest of the world, you don't know, you think it's like your world, and then you go somewhere else. So I went to Canada. How many banks? 4. I went to Australia. How many banks? 4. I went to New Zealand. How many banks? 4. I went to South Africa. How many banks? 4. There's a pattern here. I went to the UK. How many banks? 4. All of those countries that I just named used to be part of what? The British Empire. That's exactly right. And then because the language that I studied over at the University of Washington for 4 years was Russian, I spent some time working behind what used to be the Iron Curtain. How many banks? 1. Run by whom? Someone said the government. I would have said the mafia, but perhaps they're synonymous. At any rate, point being, the guy that trained me, before I ended up at the bank, I ran a small business. It was here in Seattle. It was down on Elliott Way. We were jewelry making equipment and supplies. We did $17,000 in sales our first year. So we thought our business was small. Our banker was kind enough to inform us that, in fact, we were not a small business. We were a micro business, which does something quite special for your ego. And then a little bit over 3 years later, we did slightly over $9 million. So they said, okay, you're small. Well, shoot, that was big for us. At any rate, we had 36 months of record sales. What do you typically have in a business when you have record sales? Record expenses, yada, yada, yada. No. You have a party. You guys are like party people, right? Well, we discovered at the party we had no cash, which was not a problem because at the time when we started this business, we had a bank card, which at the time was prime plus 13, so it was a great rate. So we had a lot of parties, but we never had any money. And finally, I realized, is it possible? You've all been involved in businesses that you want to grow or you've made them grow. Is it possible for a business to outgrow its owner? Yeah, what we all find is that we have to grow with it, don't we? It's important for us to grow with it. And the area that we saw, as it turns out for me and subsequently for a lot of people, was the area of finance. So anyway, that was the profile. So I built that business up. I sold it. I realized that it exceeded my ability to. My background is I'm a petroleum engineer by training. So you see how that ties into finance. At any rate, I went back. I sold the business, and in fact, it was interesting because I sold the business to. I had one of those days that I'm sure you've all had, which was basically for $1.50 you'd sell the damn business, right? It's a crappy day, and you're not focused like you're supposed to be from this morning, and you're thinking about all this other stuff. And we went in to see our banker, and our banker made a comment. We were sitting on the owner's side, our side of the desk, and he said, "Boy, one day I'd like to have my own business." And I thought, this is your lucky day. This is perfect. You can have ours. And the good thing is the bank already owns most of it anyway, so what the hell? So he bought our business, and he discovered that he was worse than us at running it. He's now back at the bank. He's a banker you'd want to find because he now has what? Perspective. He's walked a little bit in our shoes, and it's a little bit different, isn't it? Anyway, I took the money, went back to UW, got an MBA in finance, thinking I would understand how money flowed through a business. So let's see, the good news, I got the MBA. The bad news, I still didn't have a clue how money flowed through a business, but I thought, what the hell? I learned all there was to know about the capital asset pricing model, which I haven't used for 34 years either, but it got me an MBA, so I thought, what the hell? At any rate, armed with the MBA, I went back out, and once you've run a business, you all know this better than most people, once you've run a business, it's kind of like a disease, and so it gets inside you, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to do this again. But this was kind of in the early to mid 80s. The economy sucked. Well, actually, we thought the economy sucked. We didn't know what sucky economy was at that time, but we didn't have that perspective. But I was fussing around trying to start a business, which is hard when the economy's not very good. And finally, someone said to me, why don't you just go get a job like all the other boys? That was Mom. And so I looked around, and of course, nobody's hired in a recession, so I thought, geez, nobody's hired in a recession. I got to find someone who is stupid. So I thought, okay, banks. I'll go to a bank. And I went to Seattle First National Bank, and I said, I'd like a job. Now, this is interesting because you'll all be able to identify with this. I said, I'd like a job. And they said, what can you do? And I said, well, I run a business. And they said, yeah, what can you do? And so I finally said, I have an MBA. And they said, okay, well, we'll hire you anyway. We just won't pay you. And so I joined that at the C-First here. And C-First, by the way, just so you know, it's not here anymore. It's part of Bank of America. But at the time, it was an incredibly innovative bank. The 13th largest, as I said, out of 13,500 banks. That's a bunch of banks. And first ATMs in the United States, right here in Seattle. C-First on the consumer side, on the business side, very innovative. So I went through, and they said, first you got to go through training. You got to go through training. I said, okay. So they put me through training for 6 months, which meant they shipped me all around. And they said, by the way, just so you know, you're on probation. Well, I didn't know what that was. And it says, well, if we don't like you, you're out. I said, okay, I got probation. And at the end, they said, you passed. And we were at the party that celebrates all the people who passed. And everybody was sitting there, and just like your parties, I'm sure there was a lot of everybody's talking at a cocktail reception. And all of a sudden I said, and someone came up to me and said, where do you want to work? And I said, small business. And everyone stopped and looked at me. And it was just this quiet. They were, by the way, focusing, apparently. And the senior person comes over. Everybody turned and looked, and you could hear this, in those days, the starch collars cracking. And the senior guy comes over, and he comes up to me, and he goes, boy, you don't want to be in small business. And I looked at him, and what am I thinking? I was thinking, don't call me boy. But the fact was, I said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, no, you don't, son. You want to be in big business. And we argued back and forth, and finally he said, okay, you're pretty stubborn. He said, I'll tell you what. We're putting you in small business, but it's going on your permanent record. And I thought, oh, shit. So I showed up in small business. There's a whole bunch of people just like me, fairly intelligent, fairly young at the time, and thought we knew a lot and didn't really know squat. The difference was I was happy. I'm going, these are great people. And everybody else is sitting there going, ah, shit, I got stuck in small business. It's like they've been rode hard and put away wet, okay? And I said, come on, these are great people. They're going to create jobs. This is cool. And finally, someone said, haven't you heard? And it was like my little Tom Selleck voice went, oh, my God, I missed a memo. I said, heard what? And they said, you know about small business. I said, oh, you better tell me. And they said, didn't you know most of them are under what? Undercapitalized. Undercapitalized. Didn't you know most of them are undercapitalized? And you can say as much by your inflection as you can by the word itself. Undercapitalized. And I thought to myself, undercapitalized. Entrepreneurs. No shit, Dick Tracy. So I go along, and finally they let me out, and they said, okay, you passed. Said, I want to work with business owners. Well, they put me in the credit department, and for about 4 years, a year and a quarter, I saw tons of business owners, but I never saw a human being. I saw them all on what? 2 pieces of paper, and what was my job? I had a 2-word vocabulary for a year and a half. Yes and no. And if we said no, what did people say? Why? And what was the perceived answer of the business community to the banks? Any of you who are parents? Thank you, because. Of course you got that one. Anyway, so we're sitting around the lunchroom one day. I'm calling on business owners now. I worked my way out of the credit department out on the street. First 3 or 4 business owners I called on. I said, I've been looking at your business. It's like that causes that ties to that, and that causes that. And they went, yeah, okay, but my business is what? Different. Everyone thought their business was different. Well, the really cool thing about finance is it doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care your ethnic background. It doesn't care your gender. It doesn't care where you're from. They operate all the same. But what I found is the dirty secret that Catherine was talking about yesterday when she did her session, the dirty secret, there's a whole lot of people out in the business community who can't read a financial statement. And it's the best tool they had. So anyway, I worked my way out. And then the other thing happened is I was sitting around talking with my 30 business bankers, colleagues. And what are they doing? We're having lunch. And they're all sitting there. Well, actually, they're bitching, okay? And they're bitching about what? You. He's on the overdraft list again. She was late with their loan payment. So I finally said, hold it, guys. These people we're bitching about, they're our customers. Their deposits and their loans pay our salaries. Instead of complaining about them, let's do what? Help them. Help them. And so I said, do this. Give me your top 10 things, there was 30 of them, that you wish every business owner knew. They said, okay, we'll do that, financially speaking. I got 300 things. I cut them into pieces, and I started putting them in buckets, 7 buckets. Plan properly before startup. Do most business owners have a plan? Ah, come on, of course they have a plan. What's my problem as a banker? I'm sitting 30 inches across the desk. They have it where? Up here. What's my problem? No USB port, right? Cannot export. Got to have it written down. Monitor financial position. People look at the bottom line, and they go, wow, we're okay for another year. Inside those numbers is a story, and we only need 2 pages. If we're J.K. Rowling, we need 700 pages, but in finance, you need 2 pages. That's it. And if we have the right tools, we can make the, yeah, have you ever had a kid or a grandkid where you give them a book and they open the page and the characters pop up? You know what I'm talking about? We can make those numbers pop up and talk and tell us the story if we have the right tools, and we got them. Understand the relationship between price, volume, and cost. What does my P&L look like? Most of my customers didn't understand that. And I'm going to talk about that today, by the way, just so you know. I'm going to do a workshop at 3:30 where I'm going to take you through a different way of looking at a P&L that not only can help you, but can help those people that you need to help you make a profit, which is whom? Your employees. You think most employees understand how a business actually makes a profit? I think it's questionable at best. Manage cash flow, manage growth. Is it possible to grow too fast? Of course it is. A good salesperson, a good production person, a good ops person can outsell, produce, or ops the capital structure of the company, although that hasn't been a problem for a couple of years now, right? Because we've had kind of a difficult economy. Borrow properly. 2 questions. How much for how long? If you get those right, you're in good shape. If you get those wrong, you're screwed, right? And finally, so think of number 1 as getting in, think of 2 through 6 as getting up, and think of 7 as getting what? Out. And to get out, you also got to have a plan. I asked one of my customers, what's your exit strategy? He said, well, boy, I elicited that a lot for people. I don't know why. He said, I plan to die. I said, well, that'll do it. So 3:30 to 4:30 today, we're going to take a little bit deeper dive right here and look at and it just requires a little bit of lateral thinking. Secondly, I want to talk just a little bit about, I can't talk about all of these, but I picked one here. So that's kind of the picture. Economically speaking, 2002 to 2007, pretty good economy. Rising tide floats all boats. Then the tide went out, right? In fact, some would say way out, all right? So maybe that's the SS Bear Stearns. This economic thing has been so effective at sending the message that we're supposed to hear in this economy. Not just you in this room, but anybody who's running a business. And I learned it. I had to go all the way to Reykjavik, which is where? Iceland. One of my clients is up there, and they have grocery stores and pharmacies. And you may remember in 2008, in September, the economy of Iceland did what they thought the U.S. might do. It crashed. And I was supposed to go up in November, so I called him and I said, hey, man, I read about you. He says, hello, Steve. They speak English as good as us, but they kind of have a German accent. Hello, Steve. We have crashed. I said, yeah, that's why I called. And he said, I said, I'm supposed to be coming up in November. What's the deal? He says, well, we still want you to come. We just can't pay you. I said, well, I'll pass. But I'll come back in March. Let's talk in March. So I said, bring the bank's economist in. So we call in March, and he says, I've got Helgi on the phone, the bank's economist. I said, hi, Helgi. He goes, hello, Steve. He sounded remarkably similar. And I said, so how are things? Now, the interesting thing about learning English is a really hard language to learn for a non-native speaker. We have lots of colloquialisms, which means it's a word that's kind of, when you put the words together from your dictionary, it sounds kind of weird, but everybody knows what it means. But it comes out different. And when it comes out different, the cool thing is we hear it. When it comes out the same, we stop hearing it, right? Think teenagers. So he says, I said, so how are things now? And he goes, well, as you Americans are fond of saying, we are still in a handbasket headed for hell. And I went, wow, it's a little thing, isn't it? All right, anyway. The message, it's so clear. Manage better. Manage better. We got less room for error. Come on. And we need info and tools. And that's what Profit Mastery is all about, okay? That's really what it's about. 3-legged stool. Education, benchmarking, and accountability. That's what we put together at the bank. Our market share went from 24 to 29 in the business marketplace in the Pacific Northwest because we worked with our business customers. And we've been doing it ever since. The bank happened to fail in 1984, so I've been doing this on my own ever since around the world. But we find if you can give people that financial piece, they remember you forever. The word, I heard several people already of your speakers say you got to measure. Well, this just happens to be the financial metrics. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed gets done. So you got to measure performance is really what you got to measure. All right, monitor financial position. This is going to be really fast because I don't have much time left. The owners and the creditors. This is the piece that kind of starts it all. Put up the money to buy the assets, and of course that's the balance sheet. Business owns assets, all of you, to create sales, and we create sales to make a profit. In this part of the cycle, we work real hard to make it. Now we've made the profit. We try to hide it. Turns out you can run, but you can't hide. So you pay some tax, and then you got three things to do with it: reinvest, repay debt, and take it home. People ask me, well, how much profit do I need? I say, well, you know that, you know that, you know that. Add them up and prioritize them. I didn't number them, I prioritized them because we all do that in our life. And what drives that is this word. So two pieces. Oh, and by the way, we find profits and cash different places. Income statement, balance sheet. So two pieces. Here's the scorecard. This is your report card. If you were back in grade school at the end of the term, this would be your report card. What did you do when you got a bad report card? You hid it, right? So apparently that's what accountants are for. At any rate, what do I want to say? Gee, we made a picture out of it. Visual finance. We take a scorecard that anybody can do, make a picture out of it, and all of a sudden, we can tell where are the leaks and how big are they. How do we plug them? We've got to find them and quantify them. Going from a scorecard to a roadmap to a summary or plan. Simple model that anybody can do, and yet we've found organizations like Anheuser-Busch, Harley-Davidson, Ace Hardware, Westpac Bank in Australia, all of them could use this model. What's the message here? You got to be able to do what? You got to be able to measure. Dad, you got to be able to measure. You got to be able to measure. What gets measured gets managed. Thank you very much.